Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. It's your host, Gina Casbaro, and I am so excited to be coming on for another episode to continue this theme of becoming. If you've heard the last two episodes aired, we've been talking all about the power of looking at your past and really celebrating yourself and celebrating your journey instead of getting caught in this trap of self-judgment, criticizing yourself or your pace or what you've accomplished and the difference that can make in yourself, in your energy, in your life. So if you have ever gotten caught in this negative thought spiral of comparison or feeling not good enough, or like where you've gone or accomplished in your life is not good enough, this episode is going to be for you. And I truly hope that the stories in it resonate and inspire you to create this perspective shift and start looking at yourself with more compassion and more gratitude and more celebration. And if you want support in that process, there's actually an event called Becoming that is happening on 11/11, which is right around the time where this episode is airing. So if you're catching it in time, join us. You can go to ginacasbaro.com/becoming to learn all about it. And it's going to be a 2-hour experience to help you do exactly this, to look back on yourself and your life and celebrate yourself so that you can reconnect to your courage, your confidence, your power, instead of having your life force energy drained by that judgment and self-criticism. So check it out. We would love to have you. And I am so excited for today's guest, Minda Heyman, who I've had the pleasure of working with as a coaching client and witnessing her beautiful journey and so many transformations to share who she is in the world. Minda believes we all deserve support and connection as we're navigating life's big shifts. She spent 3 decades in nonprofit leadership, higher education, and startups, and then she discovered her neurodivergence in her mid-40s, which was this sliding door moment that led to deep self-acceptance and a new path forward. Since then, she's created Collective Force Coaching, where she creates a safe, brave space for neurodivergent women to unmask, break free from burnout, and build the confidence to live in alignment with their strengths and their values. Her mission is to foster community, belonging, and authentic, empowered living. And I cannot wait for you to hear her story. So, Minda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Beautiful. So, the first question I always ask is when you hear that phrase, to follow your spark, what, if anything, does that mean to you?
Yeah, I love this question and I think about it a lot because I often feel like we get these glimpses of spark, but it's like a fire that you're trying to start, that it's very hard to keep a spark going. And so there are many moments over my life where I've had these sort of glimmers of a spark, and yet it's so easy to let them sort of die down. And
Mm,
to me, finding your spark is following a path for yourself that maybe doesn't feel clear or even in focus, but you're drawn towards it and it keeps coming back to you that you need to do something differently. And I think for me, especially learning that all my feelings of feeling different my whole life, where there was a reason behind it. And so it sort of was there was a force factor that I couldn't ignore, a spark, and had to move forward with more intentionality to follow something that maybe is not quite as in focus
mm,
as what my path has been in the past. And so to me, following the spark has a lot to do with leaning into the things that scare you and continuing to move forward anyway. Yeah.
beautiful. And one thing I'm hearing too of like when you're following that spark, it's not always clear, it's not always in focus. It can be just this like glimmer. Sometimes it's
Right.
faint, sometimes it's bright and blazing. And I think this is also for me, and I'm curious to hear from you too, of why this topic of becoming, celebrating ourselves is so important because looking ahead, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And when we're trying to figure out, okay, how is this all going to unfold? And how am I going to accomplish this big goal? And what am I going to do? It's uncertain.
Right.
And yet we can look back on our past and see how far we've come. And the lens through which we look at things through can make all the difference. And
Right.
there's so much to be learned from the past that can help us in that courageous, unknown journey of navigating the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because I do think a lot about that idea of becoming. So many of us think that we're trying to get somewhere. And then we get there and it's not what we expected it to be. Or we don't meet a marker of what is supposed to be
Mhm.
successful or happiness and, I like to think about becoming and just life as a process rather than a destination. And oftentimes we're caught up in, well, I'm supposed to be here by this point. And
Mhm.
that's really defeating and not very encouraging to keep your momentum for anything. And you know this because we've talked about this, but I think a lot about life as a path. And sometimes you have a real clear sense of what the path looks like. And sometimes that path is really hard, but at least you can see it. And sometimes that path is hard and you don't even know where it's taking you because you're in sort of the lower hills and you can't see the views from ahead. And so there's a certain amount of trust that each of us has to build in ourselves to know that the path is ahead and it's one step at a time. And when I look back, at least on the mountains I've already climbed or, the trails I've already been on, it wasn't always what I expected, but
Yeah.
there's something that I gain from that. And part of that is just the knowing that I can and have. And life is hard often. So the ability to say, okay, how am I going to take care of myself now in this moment? How can I reflect back with clear perspective? Because we can interpret our experiences in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways. And I think that's the tricky part of having the confidence in how we interpret that, as well as having people around us who are trailmates, who really help us look at things from a clear perspective of when we're tired and muddy and hungry and, our flashlights stop working, and so you need someone to say, hey, I have food in my bag. And I think that's a lot of what I'm hoping to do in my practice is
Mhm.
to be able to shine a light when the path feels unclear because all of
Mm.
us are on our own unique path. Hopefully, we're in community as part of that, but it's our own unique journey. And so, having your own perspective as well as confident and supportive people around you that allow you to see more clearly is so important in that spark. People who believe in you when you have a trouble believing in yourself.
Yes, 100%. And what a powerful metaphor of I could just imagine, two people camping or something lost in the woods maybe, and one person is just like freaking out and
Right.
seeing all the monsters and like
Right.
building up all of this anxiety
Right.
about, what they're afraid of or whatever it is. And if someone else can have a different perspective and can find the flashlight and build a fire and
Right.
help see if, oh, the path is right there. Like we're not lost, we're
Right.
right where we need to be. That perspective is everything. It's
Right.
everything. And when we look at our lives, we don't always choose the most empowering perspective.
No. No.
Sometimes we can look back on our past and see the monsters and build ourselves up with all the things that we are judging ourselves for versus
Right.
being able to see the light in our own journey.
Yeah. And I think, I love that you say that because I always think of it as we often play different roles, right? Like sometimes we're the one freaking out, and sometimes we're the one with clarity.
Mm.
And so, there is that give and take of being able to say, hey, I need to pass this off because I don't have the energy right now to be clear focused. Can you take the torch for a
Mm.
moment, and trusting that giving that torch to someone else and being able to take it back for them often allows us to build our own strength. But also, I think a part of the reason I wanted to build my practice is because I think we all have something to contribute and we're collectively better and stronger
Mm.
together. And so if we can recognize that we don't have to do it alone, nothing we do is really done alone. And so building that community around us that understands our strengths and sees us at our best when we can't, and vice
Mhm.
versa, there's so
Yeah.
much power in that and how we can have a better, clear perspective moving forward.
Absolutely. It can be, like we said, hard to see it ourselves sometimes. And when you have someone else who can be that mirror, can make such a tremendous difference.
For sure.
And I'm curious too, as you think about your past and your journey and how far you've come, are there any biggest moments that stand out that you want to acknowledge and
Yeah.
celebrate in this moment that were like a big shift, a big quantum leap, a big moment of growth or transformation for you?
Yeah, it's funny when I think about this question, I've had such fortune to do so many amazing, incredible things, and I've always been a risk taker. And other people see me as a risk taker and say, "Wow, that's so incredible. You drove cross country or you moved or you did all these things." And those never felt like quantum leaps. It's
Mm,
always the things that have been hard and difficult and that maybe I didn't want to happen where I've seen the biggest growth
mm,
and or were unexpected rather than planned because I have chosen to live a life of adventure. And so that doesn't scare me. It's
mm,
often the sitting still and things happening that are most scary and have the most power in changing. And I think about, one of the most monumental experiences was a validation of being neurodivergent in my late 40s
mm,
because I lived very much a life where I always felt different, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it. And it was really this moment where everything shifted, and I was able to look back on my life with so much more clarity as
mm,
to why things might have been hard for me or why things might have been easy for me, because it's both. It's not, it's both and. And when I turned 50, a few years later, I decided that 50 years was enough for one book. So it's time to close that book and start a new one and to leave behind the old stories and experiences and really just take the lessons moving forward.
mm,
But that was harder than just saying it, right? Yeah, sure. It's great to say, I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. But, between learning about my neurodiversity and then turning 50 and having this really moment of I've lived a half a century and I'm still have so much more. And now I get to own my story a little bit and also shed a little bit more of what is no longer serving. But it's so much been, I think the biggest quantum leap is realizing that it's not, okay, and snap my fingers and it's done, but rather I'm in the sticky middle.
mm,
And that's where my biggest growth comes in
mhm.
when I'm learning to sit with my discomfort
Yeah.
and still continuing to do the work to grow and to become really that person that I am continuing to grow into. I think we think of growth as something that happens when we're a kid, oh, I've gone through my growth spurts, but we're constantly growing and changing on a biological, level. And so, how do I continue to strengthen a growth mindset versus becoming closed off of I'm at this age and therefore I'm stuck in the way I think, the
Yeah.
way I interact with the world, and I think that's a false narrative. I think this is the greatest time to be able to say, I have lived all these experiences and they've been painful and beautiful and magical. And it's just the beginning. And
Yeah.
how do I expand that? Not just for myself, but to create space where other people see that it's possible and that it's not anything remarkable or unique, because
Mm,
each of us is remarkable and unique, but it requires intentionality and a willingness to try and fail.
yeah. Yeah. So, one thing that really stood out in what you said is that some of the biggest quantum leap moments weren't where you intentionally went on a road trip or did these different things, like you're choosing to live this life of adventure. And it really came in unexpected moments, in moments that maybe you wouldn't have chosen, that, and really invited you to grow in new ways and accept new things about yourself. And it's to be able to choose in that moment. Is this going to be something that totally breaks you down or disempowers you? Or is this going to be something that you work with and the best way that you possibly can and use that as a catalyst for your growth and your evolution in a way that really supports you.
Exactly, exactly. And I think along that line, there is a moment where you do get to break down too, right? Like it's because in the last year and a half, I was laid off during a leadership transition. And there is a moment where you kind of need to go inward and just rest and reset, so that you're grounded and not sort of led by your nervous system of restlessness or disassociation or all those things that make
Yeah,
you feel sort of disconnected from yourself because we often take so much identity from work.
yeah,
And as someone who's worked since I was, probably 14, 15, there is this moment where it's okay to go inward and stop and give yourself the self-care that you need and then move forward with your feet more solidly planted, even if you don't know where they're planted exactly, but that you are not your job, you are not your relationship, you are not, all of these things are identifiers, but they are not your essence. And learning how to find that essence in a way that is empowering to yourself.
mhm, yeah. And I'm curious too, because I believe one of the gifts of this reflective process is to be able to learn from what helped you overcome challenges in the past, what helped you create big breakthroughs. Are there any, and this could be completely different, and are there any themes that you're starting to notice across some of these moments of what you had to let go of in order to embrace or step into that next chapter? And what you had to lean into and do more of that really helped you navigate some of those challenges or create those breakthroughs?
Yeah. So many things. I mean, I think first of all, leaning into support system and asking for help. I think it's so easy to feel like we need to do it on our own, but the people that truly care and love you are there for you through all of it, not
Yeah.
just through the good times. And so that's the first thing of being vulnerable and open to accepting that, especially as someone who is solo at heart. Most things I've done, I've managed on my own and navigated on my own. And being able to ask for help has been really very important and also leans into this idea of letting go of my ego
Mm,
because of this identity of I'm independent and I'm strong and, I face everything. That's great, but also knowing that you need that support. I think the other things, and I think this is part of what I bring into my practice, is this idea of creativity for the sake of creativity and
mm,
not for the sake of perfection.
mm,
Perfectly imperfect is a real sentiment for me because I love being artistic and creative, but I can't draw a stick figure. And so playing with that creative energy takes me back to my essence, takes me to a place of joy. And that creativity takes many forms, whether it's collaging or painting or dancing by myself or with other people. All of those mechanisms are, for me, a great way to come back to my true self. Writing has been a really exceptional tool. We started, one of the things that you gave me to do that was really helpful, and in preparing for today, I was reading through it and it was so enlightening of just putting a question down and writing about it without judgment
mm,
and looking back to see what I wrote and seeing all the pearls that are there, all the wisdom that comes when you don't attach to what the outcome is to it, but
mhm,
just the creating space for yourself to do that. And then the last thing is really connecting with nature. For me, nature is my guide, whether it's a starry sky, whether it's sitting in the grass, but recognizing that we are in harmony with it. And it's such a lesson around the seasons change, and yet we navigate them. And if we can see how we are just a part, a small little piece in nature, it makes things feel a little less overwhelming. And so I try to get sunshine early in the morning. I walk my dog on the regular, and she's a perfect master in this because she just likes to plop herself down and lie in the grass and say, "It's a beautiful day and the grass is nice." I'm not as good at that, but I'm learning. But seeing how we can look around and get energized from our environment has been really healing for me.
Yeah. So it sounds like you said of like looking back at these moments, some of the things that really stand out is being able to ask for support, to know that you don't have to do everything alone. And I'm also hearing of questioning identities because on one hand, it could be a story that I'm sure served you in some ways of
Right,
like, I'm strong, I can do this, I'm independent, that I'm sure created different things. And
right.
to also be able to recognize and see, is this serving my next evolution, my
Right.
next level of becoming, or would it serve me in a different way that I need right now to actually recognize it's okay to ask for support. It's okay to be vulnerable, to accept help. And it's not a reflection of me not being good enough or not being capable and starting to rewrite how you think about yourself and how you think about different things to allow yourself to shift in those ways
Yeah.
and to question perspectives that maybe are no longer serving you.
Yeah. And, it's interesting you say that, and maybe other people can resonate with this, but I think so much of my life, I felt like when I went out in the world in certain situations, especially as a successful professional in these environments, that I put on a Teflon suit
Mm,
to deflect anything that would sort of impede my ability to get the work done, to get through the world. And then I would come home and take off the suit. I would be exhausted. And
mhm,
so there was the outside and inside version, and only few people knew the inside version of me.
mm,
And it got to the point where that suit served me, it protected me. And yet I don't need the protection anymore
mm,
because I can integrate who I am in both worlds and ask for what I need in both worlds, both of myself and of other people in a more
mhm,
effective way because I've learned so much and understand and continue to learn what I need and how to ask for those things in a way that's vulnerable and yet strong, right? And I think it's they're not opposites,
mm.
being strong and independent and being vulnerable. It's really a question of having both the self-awareness and the self-knowledge to be able to know the difference and how to do that for myself and create that space for other people to do that as well.
Yeah. So again, just like seeing different mechanisms of protection and just seeing, okay, this might have served me in some ways, or I can understand why I did it, and I'm ready to do something differently.
Right.
And I'm curious too of is this process of what we're doing now, of like reflection, finding gratitude for the past, is this something that has come easy for you? Is this something that has been challenging? And what difference has it made when you have been able to look back with gratitude instead of judgment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ebbs and flows, whether it's easy. I think I'm in a stage now where sometimes you look back with sadness
Mm,
for sort of that little person, who wanted to belong, who wanted to be her full self, but maybe didn't feel like she could. And yet there's a lot of gratitude for the way in which I navigated the world. And
mm,
despite sort of some of those challenges, really learned and grew and built a life that I feel a lot of gratitude for. And so it's an interesting thing to reflect back. I think it is a practice of gratitude that it's the same way that it's a process for me. And you help me do this quite a bit of reminding me to find that gratitude because I do think it's very easy to get lost in whatever's happening and to find, whether it's someone who reflects that back to you as an anchor or helps you see what that anchor is in your life. That's really been helpful as a reminder when you sometimes don't feel tethered, what those things are.
yeah. Yeah. And like you said, of the practice and process. And it's interesting, I feel like in the past, I've practiced gratitude or said things I'm grateful for, and maybe I didn't actually feel it or didn't
Right,
actually internalize it or
right,
really get in it enough to
Right.
believe it and feel the impacts of it. And it's, and we're going to talk about this in becoming. So if you're listening to this and you want to know more about why we fall into these habits and these patterns, definitely come to that. And we're so practiced in this negativity bias and looking for what's not working, looking for, how far we have to go. So it takes intentionality, like you said, to build this new muscle of gratitude, of celebration, of looking for the good instead of looking for the bad and
Yeah.
letting that energy fuel us. So, yeah, it's just to not beat ourselves up for if we do
Yeah.
that and know that it's possible to rebuild this other muscle really intentionally.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And it's interesting because I think it's much easier to be kind and generous and provide gratitude for others than for ourselves. One of the things that I created as part of, I do these walks in nature on a seasonal basis to help us sort of get grounded in nature, groove to our own beat, and be able to grow from that space.
Mhm.
And I created these little gratitude cards that said, I am bold. I am, and people picked them and I had them say it out loud. And there was like a moment of someone feeling like, ooh, I can't say this. But they did.
Yeah.
And, having this moment of, but would you be able to say that to me with
Yeah.
kindness? And
Yeah.
so that practice of reflecting back to yourself the kindness that you would put out in the world or want to put out in the world. And so I actually carry them around because I've had a few people say, I'm having a bad day. I'm like, pick a card,
Mm.
and read it to yourself, read it out loud and put it somewhere where you can just read it till you believe it. And I think and I keep them out too, of really thinking about, okay, I am bold, I am strong, whatever those things are that maybe don't feel natural. And yet that's the practice, right?
Absolutely. And another reason why this theme has been so important to me is because I have big dreams. I know you have big dreams. Every one of my coaching clients has this passion, this fire for living a purposeful life, pursuing things that matter to them. And to do that requires energy.
Yeah.
And when we are harsh with ourselves, when we're judgmental with ourselves, like that is so draining and makes the pursuit of anything so much harder because
Yeah.
it's like we're forcing ourselves to do it and like slogging through the mud and trying to battle against these thoughts that are trying to drag us down. Versus when you are able to internalize these beliefs of I am bold, I am capable, I have overcome tremendous things in the past, that gives you so much more fuel. And I know, like, I feel like in the society that we're in, where it's just about how fast are you going and what are you accomplishing and what are the metrics that you're reaching, so many people just want to know the how. They just want to know, how do I get the thing? How do I move faster? How do I be bigger? How do I accomplish something? And for me, this is so much more important than the
Yeah.
steps that you're taking, because this is going to fuel everything. So if you're hearing this and maybe this feels like, oh, like this is work I don't really need to do, there's so many more important things. For me, this is the most important thing,
Yeah.
because when we are able to see ourselves from a perspective that gives us energy, that's going to impact every single other area of our life. And I'm curious for you too, what difference has that made? And also, how has coaching helped you transform this or make these shifts? And yeah, what has opened up for you when you've built this practice of celebrating
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because celebrating yourself is such a non-Western concept, because you're either bold and bragging, and I think especially as a female, and certainly a female of my generation, we were taught to please and to take care of, and that's what love and acceptance looks like, just from a, traditional standpoint. And what's been so powerful is that it's created connection.
Mm.
And to me, connection is everything. I've always felt that way. I've always worked in helping professions. I've always mirrored for other people what that looks like in terms of, you have so much to offer, especially working with people through their career development when I worked in higher education. and you just don't know the impact that you have.
Mm.
And so recognizing that the way we walk in the world has a ripple effect. And so if we walk through it in a way that lifts ourselves up and lifts other people up, it will have a monumental impact on
Mhm.
everything around us. And so that practice of putting out to others what I want back to me. And also, I think one of the biggest shifts in this sort of multiplying, going back to that, was this feeling of I do so much work showing up for other people, but how often do I truly show up for myself in a way that is loving, caring, accepting?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why that internal work is so important because how am I being, what do I always say? I used to say all the time, I'm my own worst enemy. Well, why would I be my own worst enemy? That's a
Yeah.
terrible way to treat myself. I'd probably be nicer to my worst enemy than I would be to myself. So
Mhm.
how my own best friend?
Yeah.
What does that look like so that I can be a better human being, but also show up in a whole way for other people? Because you're only getting half of me if I'm breaking myself down,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm much stronger and capable, more capable when I am lifting myself up because I can then have the power towards you. And that comes back to me tenfold.
Mm.
So I feel like I lost the anchor on the question, but that's what I think of this idea of connection and community and how if each of us is being our best selves, because we each have a unique journey. I can't tell you what your exact steps are. I can show up along the way to help you see for yourself with more clarity and focus what those steps are for you because we all are unique people with unique essence and how do we each find that purpose and spark for ourselves and make sure it stays that flame stays burning so you
Yeah.
can continue to move towards it in that becoming.
Absolutely. And what I'm hearing too, and what you're saying is something that's been showing up for me hardcore recently of also when we are judging ourselves, when we can't find love for ourselves, it is very hard to be in a relationship and feel love from anyone else
Right.
because we're always going to feel what we are creating inside. And if
Yeah.
we're looking at ourselves through that lens that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, no matter how hard someone else loves you, that experience is going to be completely different. You're
Yeah.
still going to feel unloved
Right.
because you are not loving yourself. So not only does this like theme of becoming, of course, impact our professional lives and our purpose and what we're able to create, it also 100% impacts, I believe, the depth of connection we can experience because otherwise we're just projecting our inner turmoil onto any other person
Right.
that we're
Right.
interacting with. And they don't get to experience our authentic, full, amazing, beautiful selves because we're not experiencing it for ourselves.
Right. Well, it's interesting you say that because I do think there's so many external messaging that it's important to figure out how to, that's where the Teflon needs to come in, right? All of the sort of perfectionism that is projected out into the world of this is what love and happiness and success looks like. And I think learning a way and practicing, because this isn't even learn, this is a practice of that's not truth, right? That's just a projection of an image. And I don't need to absorb that as a comparison
Mhm.
because I think for me, that's where it comes in this idea of, oh, how are they doing versus how am I doing? And what are they thinking of me because I'm here and there?
Mhm.
Or all of these things. And they're not really thinking about me probably,
Yeah.
but I'm internalizing that as, because it's just, for me, it's not just from the inside, it's the internalizing what I see externally as like a truth of my value in the world
Yeah.
versus letting everyone have their own value and not needing to compare with others for that. And that's hardcore coming and be right now of like learning how to separate out those two things
Yeah.
and still knowing I'm worthy and deserving, right?
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
all have hurdles though, right?
Mhm. It's interesting. One of my teachers, Jamie Alvarez Acosta, always talks about when it comes to protection. Like people put up these protection mechanisms that they think for other people and not wanting to let anything that doesn't serve me to come through my aura or this field of protection. And truly, one of the biggest things I feel like, and he talks about all the time, which I resonate with, is the biggest thing that we need to protect ourselves from is our own mind, is our
Right,
own thoughts. And
for
instead of
sure.
thinking about how can I like shut out all the negativity from other people, or what are they going to think about me and how are they judging me or seeing me, being able to put up our own, and I don't want to say Teflon suit of protection, but just bubble field of awareness, like bubble of light, whatever it
Right,
is,
right.
recognize that I need to be mindful of what I'm saying to myself. I need to be mindful of the negativity I'm consuming or amplifying, and choose and have the awareness to choose, what do I want to plant in my own heart and my own soil that I'm going to water and nurture and grow, and what are the weeds that I'm going to take out and not let take root in my psyche and how I see myself or the world.
That's funny. It's interesting you say that because I wrote down in my some of my writings, weeding is a daily practice, and a garden needs daily cultivation. And that garden is me, right? Or you. And so, and I think about that celebration that you're talking about. One of the things and one of the practices that I've learned is this idea of celebrating your recognizing when your mind does that to you of, oh, there's that thought, look, but capturing it before it takes root so you can shift your energy. And, that probably happens 10,000 times a day,
Yes.
because that's what monkey brain is. And we all are biologically wired to scan our environment for what we need to be fearful of or scared of or protect ourselves from.
Yeah.
So, like people say, why does this keep happening? I'm like, because we're biologically wired to. And so the celebration of going, oh, there it happened again, and laughing or celebrating with it, to decrease its power. Because you're right. We don't want to put a Teflon suit. I don't want to put a Teflon suit on anymore. It's
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
But I do want to recognize when, oh gosh, that really takes me, and like, okay,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the nature comes in too, of recognizing those stars up there and this, our universe is really old. We're here for a speck of it. How
Mhm.
much energy am I going to give something that has nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
you
100%.
know?
Yeah. So I'm curious of, as you look back on your journey and all the things you've overcome, how has that impacted collective force coaching and who you feel like you're here to serve now in the world? And if someone is listening to this and they're like, that's me, where can they find you and connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, yeah. So all of my experiences have brought me to this point. And, I've been a coach and coaching all my life, both formally and informally. And so wanting to really in particular work with women, although not exclusively, I just have a lot of experience as a woman and who are feeling like they're living small, who are feeling like their life is shifting, but they don't have the support to walk along the path with them. I'm most excited about supporting neurodivergent women who are ready to put the masks down
Mm,
and to learn how to live a life that is loving of themselves, that's fulfilling, and are looking to connect in community and learn to ground themselves, really groove to their own beat and find growth in that in a way that feels fulfilling and purposeful and gives them a path forward to follow.
mhm.
Yeah.
And where can they
Um,
find you?
they can find me at my website, which is collectiveforcecoaching.com. And they can also email me at minda@collectiveforcecoaching.com. And I do discovery sessions, and those are at no charge because I'm really looking to connect to people and to see how I can be of support and service in a way
Nice.
that supports them. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, all those links will be in the show notes. So if that speaks to your heart, absolutely reach out. And I would love to hear if there was one thing that you wanted people to take away from this conversation. What might that be?
You don't have to fit in to belong. And it's okay to beat to your own drum. Trust that you know who you are and you're worthy and you're important and you matter.
Hmm. Yeah. Know that you're already enough. There's nothing you need to do to belong in this world. So, what a beautiful reminder. And thank you again so much for
Thank
joining me for
you. It
this
was fun.
conversation. It's been such a pleasure exploring your journey together and celebrating yourself. And if you are listening to this and you want time and space for this, you want time to reflect on your journey and mine your past for all the gifts and all the lessons and the insights and begin to feel this in an embodied way, come to Becoming. It's on November 11th. And even if you miss the live date, the recording is going to be just as potent. So go to ginakasbar.com/becoming to learn more about it. You're going to be guided through meditation, movement practices, reflection practices, sharing, and I truly believe that this is the most transformational work that we could be doing to shift our perspective in this way. So, if that speaks to you, we would love to see you there. All right, my friends, thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.